That moment when you sit in a room full of people and suddenly you feel smaller. Not because you are, but because someone made a choice to treat you like you didn't matter. They rolled their eyes. They dismissed your words. They laughed behind your back. And in that second, something in your spirit breaks, but only for a moment. Because disrespect is never about you. It's a mirror of their own fear, their own insecurity, their own weakness trying to masquerade as strength. See, you don't fight disrespect with noise. You don't clap back just to be heard. No, that's how the weak respond. If you want to kill disrespect, you don't react emotionally. You study it, you dissect it, you outclass it. You move like a ghost with fire in your chest, silent, strategic, and surgical. This isn't about revenge. This is about reclaiming your power with Machiavellian precision. This is about becoming the kind of person they can never play again. Not because you shouted, but because you disappeared with your dignity intact and returned with unshakable command. When someone disrespects you, the first instinct most people have is to react, to raise their voice, to defend themselves, to make sure the world knows they won't be disrespected and that they deserve better. But that reaction, that burst of emotion, it's exactly what the other person wants. They want to see you lose composure. They want to feel powerful by pulling you out of your peace. But what if you did the opposite? What if instead of exploding, you simply looked them in the eye, said nothing, and smiled calmly? That's when silence becomes your weapon. Because silence doesn't scream weakness. It whispers strength. It tells them, you can't touch me. The power of silence isn't just about keeping your mouth shut. It's about communicating without words. It's about showing them that their disrespect is so beneath you, it doesn't even deserve a response. That's how kings move. That's how warriors of the mind win battles. When your silence is intentional, it becomes deafening. It shakes the room. It makes them question themselves. It forces them to sit in the discomfort of their own behavior. And in that moment, you've already won without raising your voice, without lifting a finger. Violence is not absence. It's presence in its most dominant form. When you stay calm in the face of disrespect, you project something most people aren't used to control. You show them that their words didn't reach you, that they didn't crack your armor, and that unsettles them because now they're unsure. They expected a reaction. They wanted fireworks. Instead, they're met with stillness. They don't know what you're thinking, what you're planning, or how you feel. And that mystery is louder than any argument you could have started. In silence, you create space for truth, for awareness. You get to observe their patterns, see their insecurities, and recognize their intentions. While they think they're winning by making noise, you're building power in the quiet. You're analyzing. You're preparing. You're calculating your next move with the precision of someone who doesn't fight for attention. They fight for results. Every second you hold your peace is a reminder that you don't react on impulse, you act on strategy. And the world will always respect someone who doesn't speak unless it adds value. People who are quick to speak are often quick to fall. They reveal their emotions, expose their vulnerabilities, and let their enemies know exactly where to aim. But those who master the art of silence keep their intentions hidden. They don't give others the privilege of knowing what's going on in their heart or mind. That's where the power lies, not in suppressing emotion, but in mastering it. When you train yourself not to respond to every insult, every jab, every test of your character, you become immune to manipulation. You stop being their puppet, and they feel it. They feel the shift. They feel your presence grow heavier, your energy more focused, your boundaries firmer. Silence isn't passive, it's proactive. It's a decision to protect your peace, to conserve your energy, and to show them that your self-worth is not up for debate. When you move in silence, you build without being watched. You rise without being blocked. And most importantly, you heal without being judged. That kind of strength, it scares the ones who try to tear you down. There will be moments when your silence feels like fire in your chest, when you want so badly to respond, to defend, to clap back and let them know they crossed the line. But in those moments, if you can just pause, just breathe and stay still, you'll tap into a different kind of power, a power that doesn't beg for attention. A power that makes people pause and reevaluate how they treat you. Because silence doesn't just reflect your inner strength. It teaches people how to approach you. It sets a standard. When you don't respond to disrespect, you aren't saying it didn't hurt. You're saying, I'm not going to give you control over my peace. And that right there is a lesson no words could ever teach. Over time, people begin to notice the pattern. They know they can't shake you. They realize that no matter what they throw your way, you don't break, you sharpen. And once you build that reputation, people will think twice before coming at you sideways. Because silence, once mastered, becomes louder than confrontation. It commands respect. It rewrites the script. It kills the cycle of drama before it begins. Most people confuse silence with weakness because they don't understand it. They don't know that silence is the language of the wise. That silence is the room where healing, strategy, and transformation happen. That silence is the space where real strength is forged. While others are shouting, posting, improving, you're building, you're learning, you're upgrading in silence. And then one day you show up with results. So loud that the ones who once disrespected you have no choice but to fall silent themselves. That's how it works. The ones who bark the loudest are usually the ones trying hardest to hide their own fears. But the ones who stay still, who observe, evolve, and walk with quiet confidence, they're the ones who always end up leading, not because they demanded respect, but because they commanded it. Through presence, through consistency, through knowing when to speak, and more importantly, when not to. So the next time someone tries to pull you into their storm, respond with stillness. The kind of stillness that says, you don't get to break me today. The kind of stillness that turns disrespect into dust beneath your feet. You don't owe everyone your voice. You don't owe every attack your explanation. There's a sacredness in silence that only the strong understand. It's in those moments when you choose peace over pride, stillness over struggle, that your spirit evolves. You don't just protect your peace, you increase your power. That's how you kill disrespect. Not by shouting back, not by proving your worth, but by knowing it so deeply that you don't feel the need to convince anyone. You walk different when you know who you are. You move different when their opinions stop shaping your identity. And you grow in a way that becomes undeniable. They will feel the shift when you go quiet. They will feel your presence more in absence than they ever did when you were loud. Because silence, when used with wisdom, is not a retreat. It's a declaration. A declaration that says you cannot access me unless you come correct. And that is how real power moves quietly, unapologetically, without need for permission or applause. People will try to define you before you even open your mouth. They'll look at your clothes, your background, your silence, your confidence, and they'll start building a narrative about who they think you are. That's why in this world, perception is power. But the trick is not letting their assumptions define you. It's learning to control the image you allow them to see. When you're grounded in who you are, you don't need to explain yourself to anyone. You don't need to go around convincing people that you're good enough, strong enough, smart enough. That kind of neediness for approval is a trap. The more you seek validation, the more you hand your power over. Suddenly your worth starts depending on how many likes you get, how many compliments you hear, how many hands clap when you speak. That's not power. That's performance. And performers eventually burn out. But when you operate from a place of deep self-respect, you don't chase applause, you become the standard. You move with purpose, not for show, but because you know your value. Controlling the optics doesn't mean being fake. It means being intentional. You craft the energy you project not for acceptance, but for alignment. The world doesn't treat you based on who you are. It treats you based on how you present who you are. That's a hard truth to swallow. But once you do, you begin to take back control. You stop leaving your reputation up to chance. You realize that confidence isn't about being loud, it's about being consistent. When you walk into a room, the way you carry yourself, the way you listen, the way you maintain eye contact, it all speaks before your mouth ever does. You don't need to broadcast your accomplishments or beg for a seat at the table when your energy already demands respect. But you only get there when you stop trying to fit in, because fitting in requires shrinking. It requires adjusting your worth to match their comfort level. That's why so many people exhaust themselves trying to be accepted. But when you shift your mindset from "I hope they like me" to "they'll see me when I walk in," everything changes. You begin to dress, speak, and act in ways that align with your vision, not their expectations. And that's when people start taking notice. Not because you shouted, but because you showed up. You ever notice how the people who need the most attention are the ones who get disrespected the fastest? It's because desperation has a smell. People can sense when you're trying too hard to be liked, to be understood, to be accepted, and they use that need against you. The moment they know you crave validation, they start controlling how much of it they give you. They'll give you just enough to keep you hungry, but never enough to satisfy you. That's how emotional control works. But when you detach from that cycle, when you no longer need their approval, you become untouchable. You stop moving for their comfort and start moving for your calling. You start making decisions based on principles, not pressure. And you'll notice something. The same people who once overlooked you start watching you. The same ones who talked down to you start asking how you did it. Because when you control the optics, you write the narrative. You become the director of how people perceive your presence. And the key is to remain real while being strategic. You're not pretending, you're protecting. You're not hiding. You're holding your power for the right moments. Let them misunderstand you. Let them doubt you. Let them whisper about you when you walk away. That's not your business. Your business is the truth. Your business is walking so strongly in your purpose that their opinions become background noise. You don't have time to babysit how people see you. When you're busy becoming who you were born to be, people will always judge what they can't control. But when you stop explaining yourself, you shift the focus. You're no longer feeding their need for clarity. You're feeding your own vision. And that's where true self-respect begins. When you stop giving away access to your identity just to feel seen, you reclaim your story. You begin to let your results do the talking. You let your presence speak volumes, and guess what? People will notice. They'll sense the difference. Not because you screamed louder, but because you moved wiser. Controlling the optics means being selective with your energy, deliberate with your image, and bold with your silence. It's a form of psychological strength. The less you explain, the more powerful you seem. And that's not manipulation, it's maturity. You were never meant to be understood by everyone. Some people were assigned to misunderstand you on purpose, to distract you, to make you doubt, to dim your light. And if you keep trying to correct every rumor, fix every false impression, you'll end up chasing shadows while your potential goes untouched. But when you step into your own reflection and realize, I know who I am and I'm not performing for anyone, then you step into real power. The truth is, they don't respect people who always try to fit in. They respect people who have the courage to stand out, to walk alone when needed, to say no without guilt, to lead without seeking followers. That's how you become undeniable. Not by proving, but by becoming. Controlling the optics isn't about deception. It's about declaration. You declare with your posture, your silence, your movement that you are not here to entertain. You are here to evolve. And the world will either adjust to your level or fade out of your vision. That's how powerful intentional presence becomes. And that's how you kill disrespect. By refusing to lower yourself for their shallow comfort. People will test you, bait you, try to shrink you with passive disrespect. They'll ask questions that feel like digs. They'll offer compliments with daggers behind them. And if you're not grounded, you feel the urge to defend, to prove, to perform. But what happens when you don't take the bait? What happens when you just smile, hold your ground, and say nothing? That's when the power flips. That's when the game changes. 'Cause now you're not dancing for approval. You're walking in self-mastery. The real ones will recognize that. The fake ones will fall away, and that's exactly what you want. Control the optics. Be aware of how you're seen, but never let how you're seen become who you are. Keep your moves sacred. Let your discipline speak louder than your desires. Show up every day like someone who doesn't need validation but chooses excellence. That's the difference. When you stop begging to be seen, the world starts watching you anyway. Not because you forced it, but because you carried yourself like someone worth seeing. That's how legacies are built. That's how leaders are born. Quietly, strategically, without needing to say a word. When someone disrespects you, the most powerful move isn't always confrontation. It's distance. Not the kind that's cold or petty, but the kind that's sacred, the kind that says, I value my peace more than this chaos. Because when someone shows you they don't respect your presence, you teach them through absence. Distance isn't weakness, it's wisdom. It's realizing that not every space deserves your energy. Not every person deserves your explanation. The world will tell you to fix it, to talk it out, to keep giving chances. But the truth is, some people only learn through loss. When you step away, they feel it. Not because you slammed the door, but because you didn't. because you walked away quietly with your dignity intact and you didn't look back. That silence, that space, it forces reflection. It makes them sit with their own behavior. And if they've got any sense, they'll know they didn't just lose your presence. They lost access to something real, something grounded, something they won't find again. That's what discipline looks like. It's not about rage. It's about restraint. It's choosing to protect your soul, not perform for people who never intended to understand it. Distance is not punishment. It's protection. It's saying, I'm not going to keep standing in the fire just to prove I can survive. You don't have to keep getting burned to prove you're strong. Sometimes strength is in walking away before you're scorched. That's a discipline very few people master because ego wants to fight. Pride wants to prove, but wisdom whispers leave. Walk away before the disrespect becomes a pattern. Walk away before you start becoming someone you're not, just to deal with someone who doesn't deserve you. And here's the thing. When you distance yourself, you give yourself time to breathe again, time to reset, time to remember who you were before they made you question it. You find your voice again, not in shouting, but in the silence of your own space. You stop bending, you stop shrinking, you stop explaining, and slowly you begin to rise. Not out of spite, but out of self-respect. That's what using distance as discipline does. It shifts the power dynamic without you ever having to beg for it. They'll feel it. And if they don't, that's fine too, because you didn't distance yourself for them. You did it for you. People will take as much of you as you allow. That's just human nature. The more access you give, the more they assume it's free. The more you tolerate, the more they think it's acceptable. That's why distance is essential. It resets the standard, it draws the line, it says, if you want access to me, you better come correct. And it's not about being better than anyone else. It's about being better to yourself. It's about recognizing that your time, your heart, your energy, they're not cheap, they're earned. But you only realize that when you step back and stop being available to everyone at all times. That constant availability, that need to fix things, it drains you. And slowly, it teaches people that you'll always be there, even after they've disrespected you. So you teach with space. You teach with quiet. You teach by letting the silence echo louder than any argument ever could. Because in that distance, they have no choice but to reflect. They can't argue with your silence. They can't manipulate your absence. All they can do is feel it, and that's where the growth begins. Whether it's theirs or yours, distance isn't just physical. It's emotional, mental, spiritual. Sometimes you have to distance your mind from people who keep trying to live rent-free in your thoughts. You have to disconnect from the conversations that keep replaying in your head. That's discipline. Saying to yourself, I'm not going to relive what they said. I'm not going to explain what they did. I'm going to let it be. And that's hard. It takes strength to not check on them. It takes courage to not respond. It takes discipline to let people sit in their choices while you move forward. But it's necessary because the more you engage with what hurt you, the more it controls you. And you weren't born to be controlled. You were born to rise, to move forward, to grow into someone so focused, so elevated that the past simply can't reach you anymore. That's what distance does. It doesn't erase the pain, but it gives you room to outgrow it. Room to breathe again. Room to evolve into someone who no longer needs closure, because peace became the priority. And once you taste that kind of peace, you never go back to chaos. Never. It might feel lonely at first. That silence, that space, it can feel empty. But that emptiness isn't punishment. It's purification. It's the part where you detox from people who kept your spirit heavy. It's where your mind starts clearing, your heart starts softening, and your vision becomes sharper. Because when you're too close to the wrong energy, it clouds your instincts. It makes you question your worth. But when you step away, the fog lifts. You remember who you are. You remember what you bring to the table. And slowly, your confidence returns not from compliments, but from clarity. That's the gift of distance. It makes you better, not bitter. And that's what makes people respect you. Not your anger, not your noise, but your ability to walk away with grace and come back stronger than ever. You teach people how to treat you by what you tolerate. And when you stop tolerating disrespect, when you distance yourself from it, you become someone they can't play with anymore. Not because you changed, but because you remembered your value. And now they have to come correct or not come at all. You don't need to announce your distance. You don't need to explain why you stopped reaching out. why you stopped texting, why you stopped showing up. Just stop. Let your silence speak. Let your absence make the statement, because the people who truly care will notice. The ones who never did, they'll keep moving. And that's your answer right there. That's how distance reveals what presence could never show you. You'll see who was real, who was temporary, and who only came around when it was convenient. And that revelation, that's the blessing hidden in the space. You stop holding on to people who let go of you a long time ago. You stop chasing peace in people who only brought you chaos. And you finally start building a life where you're respected, not just included. That's what distance as discipline does. It breaks the patterns that disrespect tried to normalize. The district distance as discipline does. It breaks the patterns that disrespect tried to normal. It puts you back in control quietly, powerfully, without begging for a thing. And that's the kind of power nobody can take from you, because you didn't get it from them. You found it in yourself when you finally chose you. Growth isn't always loud. It doesn't always come with a grand announcement or a dramatic exit. Sometimes real growth looks like keeping your mouth shut while your spirit levels up. It looks like swallowing your pride in moments when you could have destroyed them with your words, but you chose not to. Why? Because you're not the same person anymore. You don't need to outburst to feel powerful. You've learned that outbursts only bring temporary relief, but long-term regret. And you're not trying to win arguments anymore. You're trying to win peace. That's the difference. When someone disrespects you and you don't explode, but instead keep moving, keep growing, keep glowing, they feel that. They feel it deeper than any insult you could have thrown their way. Because growth isn't about showing them who you are. It's about becoming so evolved that they can't even access the version of you they disrespected. You outgrow the drama. You outgrow the noise. You outgrow the version of yourself that used to explain, chase, argue, or beg. That's how you kill disrespect. You become too big for it. You rise and you rise and you rise until their opinions can't even reach the new altitude of your mindset. There was a time when you'd snap back quick. Someone disrespected you and you had to come back ready. The heat, the fire, the rage. And in the moment it felt good. You felt seen, heard, like you defended your worth. But afterwards you were exhausted, because every time you outburst you bleed energy. You give them exactly what they wanted. You're